Good morning and welcome to another Real Estate Mindset Live Tuesday housing market update video. Super excited to be here with you. PPI came out today. Jerome Powell is about to speak, so we'll cover that. And PPI came in hot, you guys. But before I do that, I wanted to remind everyone that, and I wanted to tell you what's on my mind, what's on my heart. And, the fact that I am just a normal person, you guys. I woke up this morning a little bit depressed, probably because, society and the way that I've lived my life, it's all wrapped around, a lot of it is wrapped around being an owner of a house. And that's not necessarily a good thing. So I did wake up this morning a little bit depressed, to be real. And I had to ask myself and remind myself constantly, I'm reminding myself, what do I want? Right? Why am I going through this? Why am I renting a house when I can go buy one? Why am I not able to exceed my standard deduction anymore? Right? Why am I doing this? I had to ask those questions. I encourage you guys to do the same thing. If you're struggling, ask yourself what you want. And my answer was time with my family. I want my children to do well. I want my children to be smart and to be taken care of. I want to spend quality time with my wife, and I want everyone to grow and be safe. And that doesn't, have to come from just owning a house. So I just wanted to let you guys know that. And so what I did to start the morning, other than just take a picture of my hair, like in the thumbnail, if you guys wonder how I do that, I just wake up, take a picture of my hair. That's my bed head right there. But what I did, guys, is I went around to each of my children and I gave them a hug and said good morning. And I love it. I love it. But then I asked myself, and that put me in such a good mood. It put perspective back on like how I'm living my life, why I'm fighting for what I'm fighting for. But then I thought about my buddy Raymond, and Raymond is a friend of our community. And I want to stop saying it's my community. It's not my Discord. It's your Discord. And, Raymond doesn't have children. He doesn't have a spouse. And so I was like, man, what about Raymond? And so what I did, guys, I just went outside and I stood there for like 5 to 10 minutes. I don't know. And I just listened to the birds chirp. It just put me in such a great mood. So I would encourage you guys just to relax a bit. If you're frustrated, if you're discouraged, remember what you want in life. And remember that you don't have to own a house to necessarily get it. Now, PPI came in hot. Okay, sorry for the rambling. Just wanted to say real quick, I want to say good morning to everyone. All right, this live is going to be about you guys. Shoot your questions down. I'm going to do a better job at responding to your questions. But good morning to Mav. There's my buddy Trey. Trey created the Discord along with Megan. We haven't seen Megan though in a long time. Good morning to everyone. Good morning. There's Nikki. I am Dean. Dean's in there as well. Unintelligent. Anyways, there's Anna, everyone. There's Wix. Appreciate you. There's AJ. There's my buddy AJ. There's our man Zimmerman. Zimmerman is hilarious on Todd's lives. I know Zimmerman because of his commenting on Todd Sachs's live. Zimmerman, keep your wits, okay? Keep your witty comments. I find it hilarious. Usually I find it hilarious. There's my buddy Volvo. There's my Stevo. I love you guys. You guys help keep me going. There's my buddy Nightcry. Look, there's Ben. You guys, Ben is a beast. I see him on my channel. I see him on other people's channel. This guy's all about APR. I mean, I love you, brother. I see what you're doing, Ben. You're trying to be a light in the darkness. I love it, okay? Now, let's get started with today's report. Okay, now, first of all, let's start. I'm going to do a mortgage update, but let's start, you guys. I'm going to do a timestamp real quick here, and we're going to cover a lot of ground. And then again, I want to answer some of your questions when I'm done with this. Okay, so first of all, here's what's happening in the markets. PPI came out this morning, and it jumped in April to 0.5%. The forecast was 0.3%. So again, inflation came in hot, about double, almost double, not quite double the market's anticipation, which is another sign of stagflation, potentially runaway inflation, another sign that interest rates aren't high enough to combat the already existing inflation, and then the additional inflation from the government deficit spending and other things like that. So interesting. Now, the interesting thing as well is the market's reaction to this is the opposite. So we have inflation. PPI came out. Okay, there's inflation. They're losing the battle. This bad thing's happening. Okay, the good thing though, guys, is interest rates are still elevated at 7%, which is exactly what we need, like we've been preaching about going into spring and summer. But the 10-year dropped on the news, which is really surprising because generally that 10-year will go up when inflation information comes out and it's hot. So I don't know why this is going down 100%. We'll know more probably a little bit later today, but that 10 years going down, which affects residential mortgage rates. Now, take a look at the market's anticipation. Now, the market did update their forecasting for what the Fed is going to do next. It's essentially unchanged. Now, what I'm interested in saying is if the market starts pricing in any rate increases, could you imagine that, you guys? Could you imagine rate increases? Honestly, let's just get the show on the road. I'm sick and tired of waiting, right? I hate waiting. It is what it is. It's how we wait that's important, and I'm making up for lost time. But nevertheless, the market's saying no rate cuts this year, 10% chance. So the market's saying 10% chance, no rate cuts. You guys, this is really, really good, because remember, we were talking about this, the whole time this year, about how we needed elevated interest rates like this going into spring and summer. So we have that. So this is great, because we need inventory to come back and sustain, for one thing. Now, let me show you what's going on with residential mortgage rates. Residential mortgage rates, you guys, are still elevated, okay? I want to give you guys some tips. I'm going to pull up some questions, so you guys comment below, but I want to give you guys some tips, and then we'll cover, this information. Now, remember, generally, and I want you guys to get the best deal possible. You get penalized for any hardship. You get penalized for any challenges. So you want to I don't know how else to say it. You kind of want to look perfect. You kind of want to look perfect to the lender, so you get better financing. So remember, you guys, the higher your credit, generally the lower your interest rate, predominantly with conventional. Conventional's heavy on FICO score and credit score. FHA is not so heavy on that. So generally, the higher your credit score, the lower your mortgage interest rate. And also, guys, and this is to Jeff's point, Johnny's point, a lot of people say this all the time, like there's two things that people are waiting on: the economy to crash, but also you got to wait on yourself to improve your spending habits. Maybe not wait, but improve, right? So the lower your debt to income ratio, the more you get qualified for. Now, your debt to income ratio is the gauge to determine whether or not you can buy a house, right? Like, how much can you afford? So having no consumer debt will lower your debt to income ratio. And that's why I keep saying don't have any consumer debt. And also remember that generally a broker versus a direct lender is going to have better terms and better rates, because generally their operating expenses are lower, guys. And also remember, generally FHA has lower interest rates, but also generally conventional is better because of mortgage insurance going away. And also remember this, refinancing can be expensive as heck. Okay, those are the things I really want you to hold on to. Those are the things I want you to teach you in this section. But look at, guys, we're still at over 7%, thank God, but we're getting really close to being under 7. 7% is good. We need to lock up the market. It seems to be the 7% is where we need to say that's good. But remember, guys, if you've been watching me, if you've been listening, if you've been using beef jerky to get a better credit score, and if you don't know what I mean, take my home buyers class. If you've been buying beef jerky to get a great credit score, none of these rates are what you're going to qualify for. You should, and it's just my opinion because I'm not a financial advisor, you should get an interest rate half a percent lower than anything you see here. Okay? I want you guys to remember that. Maybe a little less than half, like 0.35 to 0.5. So like half to about 3/8, okay? Because you have good credit. These are like average interest rates. So you should be, again, if you're listening to me, you should get a 6.75 conventional or a 5.99 FHA, hypothetically, okay? Because again, these are averages. Now here's conventional, 7.12%, but look at FHA. This is the government insured loan, okay? 6.5. They're not lending the money, by the way. FHA is never lending the money. They're just insuring the loan. But FHA is substantially lower. That's what I'm saying. The government being involved in the mortgage market is artificially creating demand. It is what it is. But 30-year FHA is 6.59. That's insane. It's also lower than VA, but it's about the same. VA sitting at 6.6. 15-year fixed sitting at a whopping 6.62, higher, you guys, than the FHA. Now, 15-year is great. This is a great mortgage because you pay the least amount of interest right here. Okay. So again, 15-year, you pay the least amount of interest, but you guys are locked into that high payment. So if you don't want to be locked into that high payment, you guys know already, all you got to do is put extra money towards your principal. And then you could turn a 30-year loan into a 15-year loan without having to refinance. Look at this, guys. This is crazy. Dean, I see you, brother. Let's throw up some love right here. All right. So take a look at this. This is ARMs. First of all, the ARM is the highest interest rate, which makes no sense. Do you see this? So that's, I don't even understand that. It's actually jumbo's higher. That's really, really crazy. So anyways, guys, let me show you now what it looks like as far as your amortization schedule. I want you guys to be experts. Dean, I appreciate this. So shout out to Raymond. You the man. Love you, brother. So Dean's talking about Raymond. Raymond is he's just a friend, man. He's just a friend. A lot of people know him. He's in your Discord community. He just got a house as a little bit of a fixer-upper. He went well outside of the city. And, I beat him up, right? I made sure that, you want to do this, you want to do this. Let me see your appraisal. Let me see this. Let me see that. But everyone's, Raymond, I'm just going to say, brother, everyone's rooting for you, bro. Everyone is rooting for you, Raymond. You got friends here, so just keep doing great, brother. We see you. So here's your amortization schedule right here, you guys. $324,000 loan. Today's interest rate is 7.12%. Again, loan amount 324, interest paid back 461. Your interest is more like 140% if you get a mortgage at 7.12%. The reason this is so bad amortization schedule is it's front loaded with mortgage interest. The first year you guys pay back almost $23,000 in interest. Year 29, all you pay is $2,700. So you go from $23,000 in interest to $2,700 in interest. That's the power of paying down your amortization schedule. If you pay it, the sooner you pay your principal down, the better. Now, let me make an extra payment. You guys give me an extra payment to put in here. I'm going to show you guys just making an extra payment, how much time you can save. Give me $100, $1,000. What do you guys want? Throw it up in the comment section and I'll put it in here. I want to see how much time we can save doing a little bit of extra payments here. All right, guys, type that in there. Type that in if you can. What? 10,000? Oh my God. Okay, so Wix wants me to put a $10,000 extra monthly payment. Okay. All right, brother, we're going to go. No, we're going 10,000. We're going 10,000 if that's what my man wants. But the thing is, guys, is I want you to come here. What matters is you. It doesn't matter me and what I'm doing on this video. What matters is when you hit, like when the video ends, what are you doing when this video ends? Are you guys going to your amortization? Are you guys fixing your credit? Are you guys rebudgeting? Are you guys happier people watching this video? I want you guys to be happier and more informed by the time you end watching this. But let's see. Okay. So $10,000 extra a month. Let's see what happens. Oh my God. All right. So if you pay $10,000 extra a month, this is insane. You turn this loan into a 2-year, 6-month loan. Dang, put that in perspective. So if I could just like buckle down for 2 years and pay $10,000 extra a month, it's only a 2 years and 6-month loan. That's insane, you guys. Isn't that insane? Look at how much interest is saved. If you guys do that, oh my God. If you guys do that, you save $431,000 in interest. The power of amortization, you guys. The power of amortization. I mean, it is huge, 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 huge thing. Okay, so just again, everything's linked in there. Empower yourself. We're going to go into our first video. I almost wasn't going to play this video, but this video is going to go into the fact that like there's a lot going on right now. Basically, it's an investor. It's Grant Cardone. Okay. He's going to get so much wrong, but he's going to talk about basically we got some rare market events going on that's putting families at risk. The only problem is, guys, is when he's talking about yield curve inversion, like his facts are all messed up. So I want you to listen to this video. He does going to bring up some good points, but I want you to see in the comment section down here, if you guys can pick up what he got wrong, because it's it should be very clear to you by now. What he got wrong. And then after this, I'm going to take you guys' questions about mortgage. So as this video is playing, if you guys want to send me some questions down there regarding mortgage, do so.
Tens of millions of household savings and retirement nest eggs could be in jeopardy. All as our next guest warns of a rare market scenario that has only occurred 3 times in the last 100 years. Real estate investor and private equity fund manager Grant Cardone joins us now. And I think the phenomenon that you're talking about is the inverted yield curve. All that means is rates are higher on the short end, lower on the long end. And they've been like that for over 500 days. What is that telling you?
It's happened 3 times, Jackie, in history. And all 3 times back in 21, back in, what are the 3 dates here?
Probably 29.
They were devastating. Yeah, exactly. And they were devastating with over 50% pullbacks in the S&P 500 with people losing.
Okay, so real quick, did you guys hear what he said? It's happened 3 times. Are you serious, Grant? First of all, guys, we've been inverted in the yield curve way more than 3 times. You guys got that, right? I didn't see anyone say that. You guys know that, right? We've been inverted way more than 3 times. You guys get it? This is just an example of how easy it is to make money in real estate if you're just a greedy fraud. I'm not saying he's a greedy fraud. I'm just saying, let's just say greedy. This literally a child can do it that has no idea about what they're talking about. They can get rich in real estate. Filthy rich beyond their wildest dream. You guys want to know why that is? 2 reasons. Number 1, real estate is just simple math. You don't have to pay outrageous numbers or outrageous money to figure that out. And number 2, most people buy recklessly and emotionally. If more people were buying like with fundamentals, using data, there would be less people like him. Quite frankly, he's only rich because there's so many people that suck. I hate to say that, but it's true. Sorry for interrupting.
Over 50% in their retirement accounts. There's $38 trillion today sitting in retirement accounts that benefit State Street and Vanguard and Charles Schwab and these trillion dollar basically institutions. And people are at risk today and should be told that their retirement accounts are at risk of both a 50% pullback and the inflation effect. And on top of that, Biden's promise to raise capital gains tax to double of what they are today.
Grant, you've got 68% of retirees right now saying they're concerned that they're going to outlive their assets. You're obviously talking about this. You're calling for a huge pullback in the market. But even if you don't get that, Grant, how do you help retirees think about alleviating their concerns that they're not going to have enough to retire on for the duration?
Well, it's a great question, Brian. And you know, when the problem today is we're not telling these retirees the effect of inflation. In just the last 4 years, the purchasing power, the effect on inflation, the purchasing power on their retirement account, let's say they had 200,000, the invisible tax on that is 50,000 of that 200 grand. In addition to that, look, it appears to me that the IRS benefits, Wall Street benefits, and the IRS benefits by delaying a tax bill till, let's say, 10 years from now or 15 years from now, when we all know taxes will be higher. Mm-hmm. If that happened just on $200,000 in a retirement account, which is about double what the average retiree has, you're talking about another $50,000 in taxes and another $50,000, possibly $75,000 over 10 years of the effect of the purchasing power, the effect of inflation on the purchasing power. Wow. So what I would tell retirees, this is what I've told my own family to do. This is what I did with my retirement account, is I self-directed, pulled it out of Wall Street to get away from the effect of the potential of a loss at these heights that we're at, and converted that at no penalty to a real property that cash flows and actually benefits from inflation and avoids the tax man, so that when I retire, I get cash flow, not a lump sum. Because let's face it, when you're 65 years old, you don't need a lump sum. You need cash flow.
Absolutely. Really interesting and innovative. Grant, I also want to ask you about the housing market now that you brought up properties, because you're saying that we won't see a change in the situation that we're in, sort of this stalemate position, until rates go below 4%. But with inflation high, I imagine that could be some time.
Interesting.
Well, inflation's never controlled prices, okay? Like it doesn't control gas prices, food prices, electricity. It's completely a forest. Like Jerome Powell has not done anything to control the cost of wages, insurance, housing, healthcare, food, electricity, gas, nothing, zero. This is a failed attempt. It's botched. Paul Volcker back in the 80s took 11 years to supposedly control inflation. If your business doesn't make it for 11 years, you didn't make it. That's not success.
Well said. Grant, thanks so much for your time and perspective.
Okay, that's Grant. Not too bad, right? But I mean, what the heck with it? Listen to that again, you guys. It's going to be linked in my description. I'm telling you, he said 3, right? At least that's what I heard, 3. I wanted a couple questions here, some really good questions. I want to just throw this one up here first from Midwest Workshop. Appreciate that support, brother, that $10 support. Appreciate you. What he's asking, guys, is could you give some advice on buying a foreclosure? The big issue I keep finding is that they are mainly focused on selling to investors for cash. Is there something other than hard money loans? Yes, Midwest. There's also there's a loan where I think it's fraud myself. I don't think it's QM, qualified mortgage. There's a loan that's like all cash. So you can make all cash offers with this loan. I would look into that if you need to be making all cash offers, but you don't have all cash. But I would definitely understand the additional fees and additional risks of doing that. But also another thing, Midwest, is auctions like that are, well, here's the thing. If it's an auction, remember we had Ashley Pickens on here. If it's an auction, you have to have cash generally. But if it's an REO, real estate owned property, you don't have to have cash. Basically, you can get a loan. So maybe you should look, instead of foreclosed auction foreclosures, look at REOs, real estate owned property. And if you can, Midwest, go to my foreclosure video I did. It's under my collaboration list on my YouTube channel. And then go to the links in the description of that video. And I have linked those data providers for auctions and REO. So there are links in there for land, commercial properties, SFRs, auctions, foreclosures, repos. So that data is linked in there. But I will caution you, brother, you got to make sure it's so. What Ashley said is a lot of properties are in good shape because a lot of the foreclosures and auctions and REOs are brand new homes. But you still got to be careful because if you buy a foreclosure at auction, and this is according to Ashley, the tenant a lot of times still lives there. So maybe we should look at REOs, right? Unless you're professional, unless you're well-versed, maybe we should look at REOs. But as far as financing, there are those all cash loans. And then you can go REO versus foreclosed auction. And then you don't need all cash. I hope that answers that question, brother. Again, go to my last collaboration. I have a list of collaboration and check out those links. And I appreciate that support. Really do, man. Okay, so I got a question from my man, Trey. Trey's my friend. He's my buddy. To be honest, I look at like the good part of the nation is Trey. Trey's like my people. I love you, brother. All right, real estate mindset. I have proof that there is plenty of homes for sale, all overpriced. What do you think the first domino will be? Consumers waking up. Now, the thing is what's going to wake up consumers? What's going to force consumers to stop spending money? Well, one of the things is going broke, Trey. So it's like a lot of times it's like they got to go broke because they're not listening. I didn't listen. I was a professional in 2009. I was making $50,000 a month and I still lost everything because I wasn't listening. I had to like learn the hard way. And honestly, I think it all starts with the consumer. We already know deficit spending propping up. The thing is with this whole Keynesian, this new normal, it can't be a new normal because the entire foundation of the US was not built on Keynesian economics. So this whole new normal thing, it's not going to work because that's not how the US was created. I'm just saying, in my opinion. So that's a hard one, but I think just people got to wake up, Trey, so much of the GDP is consumer spending. So here's another one, lump sum recasted loan beneficial. So this is, his question is like, so lenders started doing something like a recast. A recast is like re-amortizing your loan and adjusting the balance, usually downward. And if you guys can do a recast and it drops your payment and it drops your amortization, I think it's great because you don't have to refinance. You don't have to go into a higher interest rate. You don't have to pay all the fees again. You don't have to start all over. But if you recast, lower payment, lower loan amount, lower amortization, I think it's fantastic. I think that is fantastic. Okay. All right. So good question, brother. Oh, I got another Midwest. Thank you, brother. I got another super chat from Midwest. Thanks, Travis. The video with Ashley was a good one. Been a long-time subscriber. Keep up the brother. I appreciate you. Didn't have to do that twice, man. I really appreciate that. It means a lot to me. But also, again, just go there. I love Ashley. I'm going to have her back on. I love these humble people that have all this knowledge. I love them. She's when I was talking to her before the video, all she was talking about was her daughter, her being a mother. I mean, she's a good person. Some of the other YouTubers that I talked to, just straight business, like John Williams. My God. Anyways, so thank you, Midwest. Those links are in the description. Please go check that out, and I really appreciate that support. Odine, shout out to Raymond right there. I forgot about that one. All right, let me see if there's any more questions here. What are the benefits of having a mortgage at this point? What are the hard one. Well, I would say there's two benefits of having a mortgage. You get to buy something, right? You get to own a house. And then the second benefit I would say is you get to tax deduct the interest. That's about it. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. So it's not good overall, but those are two good things. I mean, it is a collateralized loan. All right. Let me see if there's anything else here. This is my buddy right here, a realtor named House Adam. Glad you are doing this for people. I just wanted to tell you, Adam, really happy to see you here, man. I really want to see more realtors on the channel, Adam, because I know I'm hard on realtors, but like I need to be, man. Like it's like a tough love thing. Plus, I'm also disgusted because I've been doing this for 22 years, so it's both. But dude, I tell people this all the time. We need great realtors, so I don't necessarily want to push away realtors necessarily, except the bad ones. I want realtors to come here and say, you know what, that was a good point. Thank you. That was a good point. I'm going to help my clients. So the fact that this man can sit here, have me bash realtors, and then still grow and still learn, that is respectable, sir. And I appreciate you not taking what I'm saying personally, and I appreciate you stepping up. And I appreciate the support, of course, brother. All right, guys, I'm gonna go to the next thing. Oh wait, was Zimmerman saying something? So I didn't even. Wall Street banks have become a government inside the. Why, Charlton? Why? How did they get in this situation? This is a good point right here. Okay, so this is what Charlton's saying. Wall Street banks are the new government. Why? I want to see if anyone gets this right. Why is it like that? Because I'm gonna agree with him. How could we not agree with what he just said? But why? What is there? What's in place right now giving these banks that ability? What's giving these banks that ability to do whatever they want, right? What is it? That's right. Boom. The Fed. The Fed's job is to protect the banks. They say employment and price control, but the Federal Reserve's job is to make sure that the banking sector and system is okay. I just want to let you guys know that they put the Federal Reserve in place to protect banks because banks were like, we're going to stop. We're going into recession. We're not going to lend anymore. And the Fed was like, okay, well, we'll support you through downturns, right? The Fed is messing us up. What they're saying and what they're doing are two separate things, okay? Anyways, good answer. Now, let's get started on our real estate update right now, you guys. I'm going to start with prices. I want to show you guys prices, all right? Let me do my first timestamp, and then we're going to go around the world, and I'm going to show you some prices. All right, so let's get started on that right now. Take a look at this, guys. So, okay, first of all, what you guys are looking at is you're looking at real residential property prices in the United States. And this, okay, and you guys buying now, as long as you're not listening to the FUMO home buying network, you should know the difference between real and nominal, okay? So this is real home prices. So what is real? It's adjusted for inflation. And what I want to do, I want to start by showing you prices for the United States. These are real prices adjusted for inflation. Essentially, there was that slight decline. We saw that in 2022, and then a bit of a rebound, okay? But let me show you guys. Now, understand, the U.S. is the world reserve currency. And with this situation playing out the way it is generally in my thought processes, the other countries that are leaning on us, using our money, they need to go into recession first. The turmoil is going to start there first and then get to the US, unlike the GFC. Again, this is a different type of environment. So let me show you guys what's happening with home prices around the world, okay? Starting with France. Okay, this is France. France's home prices adjusted for inflation have been going down since Q3 of 2022. Okay? That's France. Take a look at here. This is the United Kingdom. Same thing with the United Kingdom, Q3 of 2022. And guess what, guys? That's when the US started declining. Remember? I was hitting home runs in 2022. Where I failed horribly is the second and third quarter of 2023. And I asked myself, why? Why did house value rebound in 2023? I go back to the fact that the Bank Term Funding Program was one. People still had money, blah, 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 blah. But nevertheless, look at United Kingdom down. I'm going to keep going. Okay, look at Canada. Canada's also down from Q1 of 2022. I mean, Canada's suffering. Look at China. Again, China's not doing well. Q3 of 2021, China's been doing horrible. I mean, you guys, values are dropping around the world. Here's Germany. Same thing. So instead of the US, let me go back to the US. Again, that was all around the world. Instead of the US having a correction like right here, all that happened, in my opinion, is the bubble got bigger on a national average, right? Obviously, some metro areas are going down in prices. But, I mean, seriously, guys, so doesn't it make sense that that price decline would have to happen first in those other countries? Doesn't that make sense to you? But regardless, let me show you something else. Now, if you watched my video yesterday, then you saw this. We have a huge issue regarding housing market data. Okay, so I'm going to go into where to get the data here in a second. But in case you missed my report yesterday on Redfin, at least I would say maybe 7 or 8 times adjusted the record high. Now, it's fair, right? You make revisions. People make revisions all the time. But the fact that Redfin made revisions over a period of 2 years on the same set of data, to me, is a red flag of fraud. But it's not fraud because it's proprietary information. So they could do whatever they want. But my point is we can't trust them. How many times do we have to prove them manipulating us before we get it? And people are like, well, why are you using their data? Because that's all we got. What other data can we use on a nationwide average that gives us week-to-week info? Who else does that other than the MLS? But you guys, again, look at, here's the new record high. So it's just $73, so $383. But look at, remember, back in June 23rd, the record high was almost 400,000. If they just revise downward the record high, then we're going to keep breaking it. We're going to keep breaking it. The reality of the situation, guys, is here's what we need to do. We need to be accessing this, okay? You need access to MLS, multiple listing service. Without access to the MLS, you guys really don't know what's going on. And I hate to say that, but it's true. We can't trust these people, unfortunately. And remember, you guys, this is how value works. The reason why MLS is important is comp data. This is an appraisal. This is how value is generated, at least for collateralizing loans, at least for mortgages. And it's the same thing almost every single time. You have your subject property right here, okay? And you have all of the characteristics of the house right there. So that's the house I want to buy. You have all those characteristics, and then you have 1, 2, 3 comps used from a subdivision. And the appraiser makes adjustments. Here's an adjustment, here's an adjustment, here's an adjustment, and then they get that final right there. But my point is, guys, is that's all done in a subdivision. And so really, I mean, let's be realistic. The only way to really get localized real estate data is to research either the subdivision or the immediate area of the subject property if it doesn't have a subdivision. Now, remember this, guys, I'm trying to empower you because I understand the solution. Maybe you guys don't understand, but the solution to all of this is you and your mindset. That's the solution. And so the better that, if you have to buy right now, you guys, first of all, I've gone on record and I'll continue to say this. I don't think people should be buying right now. I don't think it at all. But I will also say that if you are buying right now, the more that you purchase property with wedge and cash flow, the easier it will be for you to get through any potential hardships. And so I made this form for you. This is a free form. I'm trying to be at least one guy you know that is not trying to milk you for all the money that you have. All you guys need, okay, to do this is you need the market home value price per square foot. That's it. I've already taught you how to do this. This is hard too, though. The estimated payment, that is a little bit hard, but I've already showed you how to do it. The 2 things I circled is all you guys need. Okay. That is how you get through like the corruption, the fraud, the greed. Okay. That's what you need. If you guys get those 2 things, you can fill out that form. But unfortunately, you generally need a realtor to access that MLS data. And that's what I'm really trying to explain here. So you do need to work with them. I will be making some videos about how to interview people. My goal now, guys, is because I got to figure out how to make more money, but not do it in a way that's grifting people, that's taking advantage of desperate people in a time where they need help. So I had to keep figuring this out. And my plan is to start a school and to rent an office in July. So my launch date plan is July. To do that. So I'm hoping to do that, man. I mean, I'm so excited. We'll go over credit reports. We'll go over all types of stuff like that. Now, we're going to go into our second video right now, you guys. Basically how Zoomers are getting absolutely crushed right now. Now, her energy is a little bit low, but she makes some good points, and I hope you guys enjoy it. And if you can, as this is playing, shoot me some questions so that I can answer those questions after this stops playing, okay? Thank you, guys. I love you.
Right now, let's bring in Macro Advisors co-founder Aisha Tariq. And Aisha, inflation obviously taking a toll on everyone, but especially Gen Z. Mortgage debt is up 44%, credit card debt up 26%. We've got these numbers on the screen. And the question is, how much longer can people in general continue to just grin and bear it?
Hi, Charles. Well, it's scary. In fact, you know what I just saw was 2.5% for college. I have a kid who wants to go to college in the US, and that's not comforting to me at all. So yeah, I think it's putting a lot of pressure on the consumer right now. We're seeing this gradually spread throughout, spending data, which is a good thing in general. But at the end of the day, I think it creates a lot of pressure in terms of, the lower income consumer, which is where we're seeing most of the pressure.
Right. No doubt about that. Now, I did see you on the Contrarian podcast. It was titled "The Specter of Stagflation Looms." Powell says stagflation is nowhere in sight. Is he wrong?
So I don't think he's wrong per se. I don't know if we are in
Yes,
stagflation just
Zoomers.
yet. But the change in the data, the rate of change is showing us that that's where we're kind of heading, and that's always a worry, because when you have stagflation, you obviously know that we have slower growth, higher inflation, and it's never good for the consumer when that's the situation. It's not good for companies either, because we see profitability come down.
Yeah, I don't know why they dismiss it out of hand. I mean, we always are waiting for things to happen instead of anticipating them happen. I don't know why the hell we have a Fed in the first place. But then again, I don't want to digress too much. I want to get your thoughts on the CPI report for this week. What do you think? What do you think where it comes in, and what would it mean for the markets?
So the consensus says the CPI is supposed to come in slightly lower. We're a little wary of that going into CPI. We might see it come in, not a big change from last time. But our main source of worry is rent inflation.
Yeah,
And as you
going
know,
up
shelter
again.
inflation makes up about 36% of the CPI.
Right.
And
Yep.
what we've been seeing is we've been tracking home price data, and that started to inflect upwards again. So we might actually see rent inflation going up again, even though other measures of rent are showing a decline.
Yeah, but not much. We just saw this Zillow thing, right? And I've seen a lot like Zillow where they're down from the top, but they're nowhere near where the Fed can say, oh, the coast is clear. In the midst of all of this, what are you buying right now?
So we have a couple of things. We're playing a couple of themes, actually. So we have the data center and AI theme, where we like a company called Arista Networks. I'm sure you've heard of it.
Yeah, don't remind me. We took profits the day before they reported last week, and
All right, buddy. He's excited. I actually like watching him. I don't know if you guys do. And I know it's a politically biased, whatever. I get it. So I'm sorry. But anyways, what's the solution to that? I mean, the solution is, especially if you're a young adult, I mean, don't be like society. Stop spending. I don't know why so many people, forgot that. Like, don't do any of the buy now, pay later. Don't do any credit card debt. Like, just stop. Like, stop. Right. Like, literally, like right now. Like, if you're listening to this, like, stop how you're spending. Like, start right now. Like, do something. Like, when you stop watching this video, like, go rebudget and better your life, because you're capable of doing so. We have a member, Jeff. He paid all cash for a house. He was living with his parents, saved for like, I don't know, 15 years or something like that. He paid all cash. He doesn't have to worry about rates and stuff. So my point is like, yes, the economy, overvaluation, it falling apart, and we'll see that here. All of those things are true, but don't forget the other part of the equation, which is you, right? You can't just be looking, oh, when's the crash going to happen so I can buy a house? If you do that, when the crash happens, things will be harder for you, because generally lending restrictions and things like that. So you got to be doing it right now. You get it, right? You guys agree with that? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. All right, so we're going to get into the real estate stuff here real quick. I'm sorry, not the real estate stuff, but recession and liquidity indicators. We have an update on some info, but first, let me throw up some of these comments. So we got one comment. He was asking, what's your front-end DTI obligation? So let me explain to you guys, when it comes to debt-to-income ratio, that's a qualifying factor for a mortgage. There's a front end, and then there's a back end. The front end is your gross income. If you have a W-2, it's net. If it's self-employment, but it's your gross income and your mortgage payment. So whatever that percentage is. Your back end is your mortgage payment plus your debt into your gross income. So front end, remember, front end is only mortgage. Back end is mortgage plus debt. Okay. And generally you got to be about, it just depends on so many factors, but just say 43% on your front end is usually the maximum, depending on compensating factors and the type of loan. And also residual income calculations if it's VA. Good question. Hopefully you guys now know the difference of that. Now, second thing is, fiat money sucks demand into the future and leaves it on the backs of our children. I mean, if you're a young adult, are you feeling it right now? Can you guys, any young adults can testify to this here? But also low interest rates pull demand forward from the future as well, which is very interesting because of the low interest rates. Okay, from Rev Nation, I'm building an additional dwelling in the back of my yard to offset my crappy mortgage. So this is something a lot of people are doing. Rev, I'm not going to do that myself. First of all, I don't want to be a landlord. And I don't, even though I am, the drama, the expenses, but there's a lot of people doing that. I would caution you, and I just did a video on those Amazon fold-out houses that people are doing. I'm really concerned about those houses, man, because they just fold out. So like, would a strong gust of wind just collapse it and kill the people inside? I don't know. right? It's not enough technology, but a lot of people are doing that. I'm very interested. Let us know, like, what are you doing? Like, what type of dwelling are you building? Okay, buy a house wholesale in bad condition, fix it up and sell it. I mean, that's what speculators are doing right now, in Florida. So that's why, like, when he says buy a house wholesale, like in bad condition, like, let me change the terminology. That's wedge. So when I use the term wedge, that's wedge. That's equity. That's buying a house for under market value. Now he's saying in bad condition, because understand that generally in order to get wedge, the property's in bad condition. Like generally those ones that are move-in ready, they're going to try to sell those at market value. It's those really bad ones that a lot of times you find that wedge. And that's pretty accurate as well. So what they're saying is fix it up and sell it. Again, do your analysis, look at your subdivision, figure out if that's the best thing, figure out if that's the market you want to invest in, right? But generally that wedge is in those houses that do need the repairs, generally. Okay, so Stephen, in Idaho where I live, when a house is sold, the sales price is not reflected on Zillow and Redfin. It's a non-disclosure state. How can I or an agent get good comps when it's time to buy? The MLS, brother, that's the only way, especially like in Texas. I'm non-disclosure, so I can't use Zillow. But if you were in a disclosure state, I would say use Zillow. Just literally go to Zillow. You can track subdivision comps for 3 years on Zillow. Not all the data, but a lot of the data. But unfortunately, like me and Steven, we don't have that option. So Steven, either you got to get access to MLS yourself, or you got to have a relationship with a realtor. And I know that sucks. I know it's unpleasant, but it is important. If you don't have access, you need to get access. A great realtor, they do exist. They're worth their weight in gold. It's just very rare. And so what I would do if I was in your area is I would just Google, look who has the top ratings, and then just go through the ratings, make several phone calls, and figure out who I want to partner up with. Purchasing a house should be a relationship with this realtor. They should be your, almost your everything. But they don't do that though. So I'm not saying trust them with everything, right? You could trust but verify. But you're going to have to do that, Stephen. You're going to have to bite the bullet and start tracking intimately what's going on in those subdivisions. Great questions. All right, let me see if there's any other stuff here. I think we're good. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, let's see. Any other questions, you guys, on real estate? I think I'm going to go into the next thing here. All right, so we're going to go into recessionary indicators and liquidity now. Okay, so let me just put in that timestamp. So take a look at what's going on in the market, y'all. First of all, let's start here. I may make a separate video, but this came out yesterday. Walmart to cut hundreds of corporate jobs, relocate, blah, 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 blah. More signs of distress, more signs of less consumer spending. Remember, GDP, 78% of GDP is consumer spending, which means if we just united as consumers, we could take down the economy ourselves in a week. 1 week, we could be done with this crap in 1 week. If we were just united, but unfortunately we're not. And it's not just Walmart. Indeed, announcing layoffs for 8% of their staff. That's just over a year after its last layoff. So that means they didn't lay off enough people, right? Things are not good right now, you guys. Probably, they're not, one reason they're not good is this. Take a look at this, guys. This is commercial real estate prices for the US. This is a percentage change, okay? So commercial real estate, we all know by now, it's been going down. But what I wanted to point out is how that downward trajectory can actually lead us into recession. You actually saw that here, surprisingly, and we haven't looked at this. We saw that leading into the GFC. They were still positive, but that first call of the GFC right here, that's when they started turning negative. So it's kind of fair to say that it had an impact on the GFC, commercial real estate prices. So it is plummeting further than the GFC. Thought that was interesting, but that's kind of what it looks like as far as how much our price is going down on commercial real estate, 7.5% year over year. That's as of Q4 of 2023. The information is even worse right now, but keep your eyes on that. It's another indicator of what's going on. Now, here's another indicator. This is the biggest indicator. We're literally stuck here. It's really, really crazy, you guys. And again, we've been inverted. I believe this is what Grant Cardone was talking about. We've been inverted at the 10 and the 2 for, I don't know, so many times, but we've been inverted quite some time. And again, it's just so fascinating to me that we're staying like 30 to 40 basis point inverted. The market will not shake this. It's like it's stuck and everyone's like waiting for the next thing to happen. Like, is it going to rebound? Are we all okay? Or is the market going to crash? Right? It's like, look at that. It's stuck. Isn't that just incredible? And that's also, to me, also showing us inflation's back. Okay. And because we see it here, this is the overnight reverse repo market. We are also stuck here. This one wrecked everybody. I'm not an economist. I really, I thought that we would have like this ended by this month because of the trajectory from here to here. Like this trajectory, when I made that forecast, would have put us out of money in the reverse repo market, which is like the suspension of the economy. It's like the excess money. It's like this is where there's too much money. This is where it's at. This is where they park it. 492 billion. That's very dangerous. That is very dangerous. So on one hand, consumers are getting killed, but on the other hand, there's still inflation everywhere. Inflation, money, inflation, money, the same thing. Money everywhere right now. They cannot get any more money out of this reverse repo market. That's not good. That is a bad thing. Now, here's the thing, you guys. So taxes came out. This is the Treasury General account. And again, they still got a ton of money. And look at this run up right here. So from April 10th, we were at 704 billion to 941. So that's the revenue. That's like taxes coming in, right? So huge increase in taxes right there. My point in showing you this is they still have a ton of money. There's still a ton of money out there. Now, the deficit did update. So it actually went down. Why? Why did it go down? You guys should know this. What happened in April? Tax revenue. Right? Tax revenue. Thank God it didn't go up, because why would it? We got tax revenue. I was worried it was going to go up even with the tax revenue. So we're still sitting at $855 billion. Now I'll explain to you guys, like I will flip. I'll say there is no crash. Okay. Okay. So I'll say there's going to be no housing market crash. I'll be very clear about that. And I'll start selling real estate like this. But here's what I need. Okay. I'm just going to be honest with you. Okay. Here's why it's going to crash, you guys. Like it's even worse. I will change my narrative when the yield curve there's reversion, it uninverts. Okay, so we have to have no inversion there, no historical precedent for a recession that brings unemployment, that brings foreclosure, that brings drops in prices. So you have it has to be uninverted. And number two, we can't have this type of deficit spending because that is masking the health of the economy. So if the deficit spending slows down, we're reinverted. And this thing here, the government, okay, let me just show you. The government stops messing with our labor market, manipulating it. You can't replace private full-time jobs with government deficit jobs. We pay for those jobs. It's not the private sector. It's not the economy. It's us, and we're already squeezed. Government jobs are exploding, and the percentage of payroll changes, the percentage of job growth, and it has been exploding since about 2022. 2022 to 2023, you could see it. I mean, the run up, you guys, is insane, absolutely psycho. So if those things stop, if they slow down, and we all start making more money, this is real median household income, and this starts going up to where it needs to be to sustain those prices, then I'll say, you know what? I don't think the housing market's going to crash. I'll say that. But whether it takes 2 years, whether it takes 2 weeks, I don't care, because this is going to happen. It doesn't matter to me when it happens, although I wish it would happen already, because I know it's going to happen. Something's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen, but we know something's surely going to happen. But again, you guys, if those things change, I'll change my tune a little bit here. But if those things aren't changing, then why the heck would I not think things are getting worse? Now let's see. Jerome Powell is apparently speaking right now, you guys. Let's see if I can get that video up real quick. All right, so I'm going to try to play you guys a video of Jerome Powell real quick. Let me see. I think he's
in 2024.
All right, take a look. This is Jerome Powell. He's talking right now.
So I think we probably have realized most of the reversal of the pandemic supply side effects, but not all of it. But I think we get more sort of the final parts of the supply chains really getting sorted out. As I mentioned, the surveys of businesses, they still say there are shortages. They still say that they have a hard time hiring people, for that matter. So I do think we're still getting very substantial numbers of people coming to the country and going to work. Let me add, immigration also not a policy that the Fed works on or has opinions on, but I'm just giving you the straight economics of it. People come in, they can get a work permit. They are getting work permits, and they go to work and they're paying taxes and they're creating economic output, and there are millions of them. So it's alleviating the labor shortage that we had in the industries that really had it the worst. So I think all of that, it probably helped at the margin a little bit in cooling the labor market off. It's both supply and demand, but we think at the beginning, in the longer run, it should be neutral on inflation, but in the short run, it might have been positive. So I think that's a factor too.
In the long run.
And just to kind of turn to these like broader demographic trends, there's been a lot of talk in recent years about how they will impact inflation, whether they have some sort of impact on R-star, the kind of, you know, the Goldilocks level of interest rates in the longer term, one might say. I mean, how do you think about these kind of longer term demographic trends and other factors and how they're going to influence where you see this kind of magical Goldilocks neutral
inflation
rate of interest?
Immigration.
So the R-star, for those of you who aren't, you know, central bankers who read every word of every story Claire writes about us, R-star is really a longer run concept. R-star is a neutral interest rate that would neither push up on economic activity nor bring it down at some hypothetical future time when we're at full employment, we're at 2% inflation, and there are no shocks hitting the economy. So think 5-6 years down the road, there's this sort of nirvana out there. Its relevance for current policy making is kind of limited, and I think you need to say that. But really what we're doing in an FOMC meeting is we're looking at, you know, the broad effect of the things that we're doing on the economy, and we're asking ourselves, is policy tight enough? Is it too tight? We're looking at what's happening in the economy. We're thinking about lags. And it's not a debate over the level of R-star, because that's a longer run concept. Now, and the argument is made that R-star will go up, and this is a debate that economists have been having for some years now. But the idea is, between deglobalization and the need to fund the energy transition, and perhaps the need to spend more on military and the aging of the population, bigger deficits, higher, all of that could push up what is a neutral rate. And I think those are interesting debates to have, but ultimately we're not sitting around wondering what the longer run neutral rate is when we do policy. When we make policy, we're thinking today, is our policy delivering what the economy needs to move it toward the mandates that Congress has given us: stable prices, maximum employment.
So would you divorce it from, I mean, I think why this has come into focus, if you like, is because, you know, now that, you know, cuts are being considered in some parts of the world, at least there's this sense in which people are thinking, how low will rates go? Would you see that as part of the kind of R-star debate, or would you want to divorce the two factors of this current cycle and where R-star will end up being?
I think the R-star debate runs in the background, but again, it's a longer run concept. You could, you know, if you wanted to think about a shorter run R-star, that would be more relevant. But that's not the way we think about it. We think about the effect of the things we're doing on financial conditions more broadly and on the economy. And how is it affecting the economy, and why? And, you know, and all of those things lead us to believe at this time that policy is restrictive, and that it looks like it will take longer for us to become confident that inflation is coming down to 2% over time.
And how is this debate occurring around the table in Frankfurt at the ECB about longer run interest rates, or even, you know, where are we going to end up? What's the rock bottom for this cycle?
Yeah, I mean, that's of course a difficult question to ask, because there are so many moving parts here. But what I would say is that if you look at the likelihood or the likely nature of the shocks that will hit us in the future, we came out of a period in which we had globalization, which was a slowly moving positive supply shock, ever more goods for ever lower prices coming from the rest of the world, which meant that for almost 10 years, we continuously had to approach our inflation target from below. We had a low inflation problem. Going forward with fragmentation, with aging of our societies, in my view, it's more likely that the shocks hitting our economy will actually be of the nature of negative supply shocks, not positive supply shocks. And if you think that through, that means that probably we will have to approach our inflation target more often from above than from below. And that probably suggests that we are not, at least I don't regard it very likely, that we will move back to the time in which we had a continuous sort of our fairly persistent low inflation equilibrium with very, very low interest rates. We probably have to on average, run a slightly tighter ship because of the nature of these shocks that are currently relevant to our economy.
And just to come back to something that I think has been kind of in the
And these guys
background here for quite a lot of the discussion about high interest rates taking possibly a while longer till they have the desired impact on some pockets of the economy. You know, how do you see that? Is this a legacy of this very low interest rate era? And how do you really address that when it comes to monetary policy? That, you know, is there just going to be this lag from now on that didn't exist, say, relative to pre-2008?
Okay, so lags, rate lags.
So I think if you look at the bigger picture, we've seen the labor market's a good place to see this. You've seen demand for workers cooling off pretty substantially. The ratio of vacancies to unemployed people, for example, has gone from more than 2 to 1 to now 1.3 to 1, and it was 1.2 before. So that's a decline in demand. That's demand related. You also see wages coming down. You see quits coming down. So I think that tells you that policy is probably restrictive. I think it's also fair to say, though, that the U.S. economy is different this time for a couple reasons. One is that people financed themselves into very low rate mortgages, and now they won't move because they would be moving into a higher rate mortgage if they did, and they would be throwing a lot of value away. The same is true of businesses, many of which, as indeed you would expect, have termed out their debt. And so they're not feeling the effects of interest rates. So it may be that policy is hitting the economy not quite as strongly as it would have if those two things were not the case. Notwithstanding that, I think the overall picture still is policy's working. It's weighing on spending. It's weighing on interest-sensitive spending, and it's certainly weighing on the labor market. It's a question of restrictive policy. As I mentioned, our policy is the highest it's been in quite some time. The rate is, at 5.25% to 5.5% is high relative to recent history. So we think that it's probably a matter of just staying at that stance for longer, and that's how we're thinking about it.
And I mean, you note about housing and about the standard model in the US being I think I'm right, the 30-year mortgage is kind of the standard mortgage product. I think here in the Netherlands, flexible rates are quite more fixed rates.
Yes.
So fixed rates. So fixed rates are quite common too, but I imagine with shorter
10, 15,
duration.
An average mortgage, I think, has an average maturity of like 16 years. Of course, that's a little bit endogenous because of the low interest rate period we had for so long that, of course, mortgage holders tended to extend the maturity. So now, lately, it's been coming in a little bit. But still, we have a lot of fixed rate borrowing in the Netherlands, and that has, of course, also mitigated the impact of the monetary tightening, which has been stronger in those areas where there is more variable rate borrowing. But in general, I would say 85% of all financial intermediation in the euro area runs through the banks. So when you look at monetary transmission in the euro area, you have to look at credit. And credit growth has more or less come to a halt. As a consequence, we increased policy rates by 4.5% within 14 months. Credit growth came to a halt. That was a feature of the policy, not a bug. And credit has been flat for quite a while. And now we're also beginning to see the first signs of life again. Now that there is an anticipation that our next interest rate move will be a reduction of rates. You also see the first signs of recovery in credit. So in that sense, I think this is more or less how you would expect monetary transmission to take place in the euro area.
And how much of an issue has that been for you in the US, where we do have this, where capital markets play a far greater role, and where, for reasons that were never quite clear to myself, the turn of the year, the markets were predicting, 6 interest rate cuts by the Fed, and pricing credit off the back of that, and there being quite a big, quite substantial growth in lending and refinancing over the first couple of months of the year. How much more difficult does that really make your task that the banks aren't as big a vehicle?
Well, so for what it's worth, it's a minority of intervention, but banks are still important, and particularly for small and medium-sized businesses that don't have capital market access. And credit has been tighter for some time now, particularly in the wake of the turmoil we saw earlier last year. Still, credit growth has been modest, and that's another sign of tight financial policy. So that's part of the picture. I think the fact that we have capital markets are so important for many consumer loans of various kinds wind up in the capital markets or securitized and are not held by banks. It's just it's a very healthy credit machine for people, but they're feeling these higher. Those are short-term interest rates. I think that the ones that are longer-term interest rates are the ones where they're not feeling it, and that's really mortgages, and that's companies that have turned out their debt. I think other forms of consumer debt are short-term, and the surveys show that people think it's not a good time to buy durable goods like cars and washing machines, and the reason is it's a floating rate loan at a very high level.
Absolutely. And when you look at the banking system as a whole, we've seen some jitters, I think, on both sides of the Atlantic, but on the whole, it seems both systems are relatively stable despite quite substantial rises in interest rates. Has that surprised you at all? Maybe first to Chair Powell and then to President Knott.
Has it surprised? Not really. Our banks are particularly our large banks are strong, well capitalized, very successful competitively, globally. They're in I think one of the reasons why the recovery broadly around the world from the pandemic has been strong as opposed to the one from the global financial crisis is that the very large financial institutions came through just fine. The U.S. banking system overall is in good shape. Banks are making loans, as I mentioned. Credit conditions are a bit tight, but that's part of our policy. So I wouldn't say I'm surprised. I think we obviously had a period of turmoil early last year, and we acted pretty quickly to stem the turmoil and also to
Bank Term Funding Program,
work as a supervisor and make sure that banks had good plans on liquidity, had capital,
Basel
understood
III.
the portfolio losses that they have for longer run securities, and are in a position to understand and manage those.
Well, I think it's pretty clear that if you have such an unprecedented rise in interest rates in such a short period of time, that this constitutes a massive shock to the financial system. So when we were sort of in the process of tightening, of course, this was sort of enhanced monitoring, an area for enhanced monitoring. Now, I think we can say so far so good. I entirely agree with Chair Powell that the core of the financial system has held up quite well. And I think this is in part, I think the success of the financial reform agenda that was rolled out after the global financial crisis under the aegis of the Financial Stability Board, which was very much focused about stronger capital, stronger liquidity, stronger risk management at the banks, which were at the core of the financial system. And that has clearly paid off. Now, there have been some idiosyncratic accidents here, the second-tier US banking system, Credit Suisse, but I think there were idiosyncratic factors behind it. And the banks that arrived into trouble in the US were not even part of the Basel III arrangement and the financial reform agenda. But I would say so far so good. The question marks today are much more in the non-bank financial intermediation space, where we have seen a couple of quasi-near miss accidents, I would say. The Dash for Cash, the LDI, the Archegos, the commodity traders in February 22. So these have all been pockets of vulnerabilities where you saw a combination of excessive liquidity mismatches combined with pockets of hidden leverage that we were unaware of before. And that is now also front and center of the work program of the Financial Stability Board, much more the NBFI space. Of course, we have to learn the lessons from the few banking failures that we did see, and that is continuous maintenance. But I think if you were to ask me, my main focus is more on the NBFI space than on the banking space.
We'll come back to Credit Suisse because I know that's a topic that you've spoken about quite a bit, and a few of our audience have got questions on that. But non-banks, would you share that you know, that sense in which they're the big lurking danger in the financial system right now?
I guess I would say it this way. In the U.S., non-bank participants by non-banks in lending activities, for example, has been growing very, very fast. And it's a fairly new thing. And in many cases, whole markets are being now taken over, or now majority for non-banks. And so our job is to monitor that very carefully, because I'll say a couple of things. One, there hasn't been a downturn yet. You worry about very fast growth in anything. It just kind of raises financial stability questions, and you wonder, is it a bubble? What will happen, and will it deflate, and that kind of thing. And so you want to be watching it carefully. I will say, though, it's different. You know, some of the we've spent a lot of time looking at it. I just point to a couple of things. One is, many of the lending structures are not subject to run in the way that banks have traditionally been. The funding tends to be from limited partners who have their investment locked up for many years, and they can't get it out. So as opposed to the danger with a bank can be that all the depositors want their money at the same time. And that's the traditional problem that we've been trying to solve with bank regulation for hundreds of years. But these are different. They don't have, and runs are responsible. Bank runs or things like that are really responsible for an awful lot of the problems that happen in one form or another. So the non-bank financial sector doesn't have that as much. Another thing is the ties between banks and the non-bank financial institutions are substantial and growing. So there's plenty of monitoring for us to do there. It's not obvious to me that at this point that it's a net loss to financial stability, but I would say our jobs are to monitor it very carefully and thoughtfully, and understand the implications.
And just to return to the topic of Credit Suisse, with a question submitted ahead of the event, in your keynote speech at the 7th Annual Conference on European Systemic Risk, you talked about events surrounding Credit Suisse. What can the Foreign Bankers Association, to which we're speaking today, and the Netherlands Bank learn about the collapse of the Swiss?
What are they going to learn about the collapse?
I guess the main thing one can learn about the collapse of Credit Suisse is the huge importance of governance within financial institutions, because it is pretty clear that the events that led to the failure of Credit Suisse were not sort of a classic lack of capital, or let's say too much credit risk relative to the capital. It was management failures, there was outright fraud, there were misinvestments, there was misbehavior, even at the top of the institution. And if you have a series of governance failures at an institution, it will lead to an erosion of confidence. That erosion of confidence will lead to deposit runs, which, by the way, already took place much earlier than March 23. There was already a significant outflow of deposits also in the fall.
These are the smartest of people
2022.
Right. These are the smart people, guys.
So we have to remind ourselves, it is not only about capital and liquidity. Governance of financial institutions is of utmost importance.
And are there any questions about AT1s and the treatments of those particular instruments that you think can be drawn in the Dutch context?
Yeah, of course, there was a case where AT1s have been completely written down. So I think it behooves us to look a little bit deeper into this issue, why the AT1s were drawn down, whereas equity was not fully written off. This was, by the way, completely in line with the contractual provisions of the
what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait until we get back to Jerome Powell, because I don't want to listen to him talk anymore. So we'll wait till Jerome Powell, because I mean, why do we want to listen to him anymore? I mean, they're just going in circles, not saying anything. She asked, what did we learn from that bank failure? Well, what we learned is more government needs to be involved. They need a Federal Reserve. And so that's what our Federal Reserve does, right? It is involved in the banking system, preventing them from failing. And we pay for that as taxpayers, the form of inflation and things like that. I don't like it. You know, tell me what you guys think so far. Now, she's going to get back to Jerome right now.
John, from who asked, during the during COVID, the Federal Reserve applied high levels of monetary stimulus to further raise asset prices and support growth. Bloomberg called you Wall Street's head of state, as a reflection of how strong your actions were on asset prices and how profitable your actions were for Wall Street. How does that make you feel? And how do you look back at this with the benefit of hindsight?
Okay.
It makes no point of contact with the way I remember those days, so whatsoever. So I would just say this: if you put yourself in the place where we were in March of 2020, no one knew how long it would take to have vaccines. No one knew whether millions of people were going to die fairly quickly, or how long the economy would remain closed, or was it even going to be possible to reopen the economy if it had to be closed for a year? What was that going to look like? So I think it was so uncertain that I came to the view, and my colleagues did too, that we really needed to use our tools in ways that we hadn't before, because I would never have been, if things didn't work out, I didn't want to, if we had to go through a really deep, lengthy downturn, I would not want to have to explain why we didn't do that. So we did, and what happened is we announced these very aggressive, vigorous programs to support markets that we had never had to support before: the municipal market, corporate debt, these were red lines that we said we'd never cross. But the thing is, when we made the announcements,
and they crossed them,
the markets healed themselves. So we made very, very few loans. We had something like $6 trillion in lending capacity. So the announcement effects of the things that we did, it really worked this time. So I think, broadly speaking, that the initial response was very successful and involved ultimately very, very little in the way of actual lending, a lot of announcements. Then the story goes on, and you have the reopening and the inflation, and we're still living through that. I think we'll have to judge that from a greater distance.
Anything you'd do differently in retrospect?
Okay, what is he going to do differently?
There's nothing I would do differently in the initial response. I think we did very well, and I think that the world continues to benefit from the strong response that we took, and we really avoided an awful lot of a bad tail risk that could well have come due. Again, I would say on inflation, when inflation kind of unexpectedly arose in the first quarter of 2021, I think we're going to need to, I've tried to resist reaching, conclusions about that episode until, it looks so different now than it looked a year ago, for example. All the progress we made in 2023, I think we're talking about it in a completely different way now. I think 2-3 years from now, we'll be doing the same. So I don't want to try to learn lessons, in the middle of the story.
Sure. I think that's very fair. And another question here that's just been submitted from Abia, who asks, is Chairman Powell confident about the degree of independence of the Federal Reserve in relation to the executive branch?
Good question. Good question.
Do you think you have the power?
Is the Fed independent?
Yes, without question. I do. I think when I talk to elected representatives in both political parties in the House and the Senate, and I think there's very strong support on both sides of the aisle, on both sides of Capitol Hill, for an independent Fed. I think people do understand that we're just there to do our job on a non-political, nonpartisan basis. Nobody's perfect. Everyone makes mistakes, but the Fed is doing the absolute best we can with the tools that we have and the understanding of the economy that we have. I think that is very broadly understood and supported on Capitol Hill. So I'm less worried about that than the sort of things that have been in the press lately might suggest.
Well, then why not call them out, right? Why not call the government officials out? If Volcker did, he called him out. He said, stop spending. You need to help the American people lower inflation. If he's independent, then why is he tiptoeing around these people? Why isn't he calling them out saying, hey, we're fighting inflation. We've raised interest rates at the fastest rate since Volcker, but we kind of have a stagflation situation going on, probably because all of the horrible government deficit spending. And that goes as well into jobs, government jobs. The reason he's not saying that, in my opinion, is just because a lot of what they do is intertwined by the government. They have to take orders, according to him, from Congress. So it's It's BS, man. I mean, in my opinion, anyways, the Federal Reserve is designed to save the banks, not the taxpayers. They are forced to say those opening lines, how price stability, unemployment, blah, 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 blah. But the reality is they got to make sure that the banks are functioning so that the banks can lend us money. And so what would it look like without a Federal Reserve? Would we not have a lot of this inflation problems? Probably. But also it's a double-edged sword. So we got to be realistic. So if we didn't have them protecting the banks, then it would be way harder to qualify for a loan, right? So that's what I'm saying. It's a double-edged sword. So we take the Fed out, then almost no one can get any money. We keep them here, a lot more people can get money. And I mean, it's just a horrible thing. It's a horrible thing because to be honest with you, if we were just consumers that were spending wisely, that were united, we would be able to get through this a lot faster. But it is what it is, guys. And what I'd like to do is let me just end here on what's the solution if you're frustrated. If you're upset about what's happening in the economy, what I would suggest, guys, and you guys know I'm a little bit of a sensitive person. I wear my heart on my sleeve. I believe in the transparency. Especially with YouTube, transparency is so key. It gets a little cringy, but I'm sorry, guys, I'm still here. I think we should redefine what we want. I think each of us that are struggling right now, redefine who you are, redefine and remember, what do you really want? Do you want to be respected? Do you want security? Do you want to be loved? I mean, what do you really want? Sometimes it's really important to take our focus out of things that are affecting us in a negative way. And honestly, guys, this has been affecting me negatively. I have to constantly check myself. It's an active effort because if I'm too wrapped up in real estate, it wears off on my family, my children, my wife. So that's what I'm saying. Put the horse before the cart. Make sure you're okay. Make sure you understand what you want and make sure you're going after it and you're proud of yourself. If you're not confident, if you're depressed, gain confidence from your obedience. What do I mean? Make a goal, an easy goal if you're struggling. Make a goal and keep at that goal. If you keep at that goal, it's going to give you more confidence. And that's especially important if you're depressed. So I hope you guys understand that. There's a really cool community on Discord, Real Estate Mindset community. You guys can join that. You guys can take home buying courses. You can use the forums, sit tight for the course. But I definitely want to make sure that we understand that owning a house is just a small part of life. That's it. Now, other than that, guys, I'm going to get out of here. I appreciate you. I'm going to be back on Friday. Look out for this evening's video. I'm going to try to edit it. I did a boots on the ground video. I think that I found our first brand new subdivision. That's going to be our case study for the channel. So it's a brand new subdivision. It's a flagship subdivision. It's supposed to be super luxurious. They just broke ground. 1,100 acres. They're supposed to build 3,500 homes, and it's right next to an industrial zoning complex and surrounded by other new development communities. So it's literally the perfect community to follow because the construction and development of this community is going to go well past presidential elections and well past non-recession rumors. So it's going to be really cool. Look out for that video. And other than that, flagship. Yeah, exactly. Flagship. Anyways, and it picked it. It's just the most horrible place that they put. You'll see the video. I'm going to start trying to edit that right now. And other than that, guys, really appreciate you hanging on. Everything's going to be chaptered. Keep doing well. I'm super proud of you. Share your success in the Discord group or in the comment sections. If you're learning, please tell the community what you're learning. People say, Travis, I've learned so much for you. It would mean a lot to me if you tell me what you've learned. So tell me what you've learned so I know what to keep talking about. And other than that, guys, I love you. Take care. Love your life. Love the people in it. You're doing great. I'll see you guys next time.